Hello and welcome to Norwood Memories. It's kind of an offshoot of the Norwood Digest. I'm your host, Jack McCarthy, and for the third time, I'm joined by former selectman Helen Donohue. Helen, we've done the 50s. We did an overall thing. We're going to do the 60s, but you said you had a couple of things that you wanted to add to the 50s.
Thank you, Mr. Jack. Thank you so much. So, doing this show is so pleasant with you, and you make it so that we can add things on if you have to. And just the love of the town makes me think of a few things that I want all the people in the town to know about. And because it's a part of your life, I don't know what camera, I guess this one, what part of your life that I want you to feel the same warmth from wherever you were born to feel toward Norwood. But the easy way to approach it is that book, Make Way for Ducklings. So the policeman with the long top coat on it. And I was trying to think, what would people really, I want them to remember about our wonderful town. And it was kindergarten at Balch School, Callahan School, and I checked on the Callahan School. That Callahan School, blessed school, was built in 1907.
Wow. So
how about that? It was built 6 years before the new Balch School. Imagine that, school. Yeah, the new Balch School. And because the old Balch School was wood, then the brick part was, but the Callahan beat it by 6 years, which is a good thing. And then the Winslow was old too. But anyway, so the policeman standing across the street and with the long wool coat on and a set of brass buttons all the way down and just taking over the traffic, and it's just such a beautiful thing that people will remember from probably whatever town they were brought up in and know that it was happening here in Norwood too.
It's like a vision of a Norman Rockwell painting.
Exactly, exactly. And then out of life, the first woman crossing guard was Josephine Sirica. And when you come into South Norwood from uptown, you go underneath the bridge, and on the left there's a house that's being remodeled there now.
Yes.
That was the house that she was born in. And the way that we operated in Norwood was the way that it operated around the country, from what I understand. That say you're in Maine and you have a house, then you have some more families, so you add on to the house. And that's how it happened around the country. But in Norwood, in South Norwood, what we had was like a family would make a six-decker. The grandmother and grandfather would have the bottom right unit. Then as each kid got married, they got a unit. And that's where Josie started. And her son became the principal of the Cleveland School.
Oh, wow.
How about that?
That's great.
And she moved uptown, and all of us in South Norwood, oh, she's going away. She was only going uptown. But they loved her uptown as much as we loved her there. And she has her name up on a sign where she crossed the kids over up there too. But what I was thinking about that I'd like to share with you, near the town hall, there is the building next to, that we all know that the old colonial that used to be the fire station.
Right.
And the fire station, by the time I knew it, the fire station wasn't used for fire station. I told you that on the first show. But beside the fire station, there was a building called Holman Hall. And now it's called Luster Cleaners.
Okay, that's where I thought you were going. Okay.
And Luster, Holman Hall. What was Holman Hall? Holman Hall was a very important part of our town. Because like nowadays, you have, hotels and ballrooms and this and that. But when we were all growing up here in Norwood, we had Holman Hall. And it was owned by Charlie Holman and his brother Tom. Tom was the one who really pretty much ran the business. Charlie Holman was, he was the state rep for almost 30 years. And he was a Republican, but he was more like a Democrat, He was for the people.
Yeah.
And so at Holman Hall, their main dishes were chicken pie and banana fritters. And it was like a right of a young person growing up in Norwood, a young man growing up in Norwood. Do this, do that, be a waiter at Home and Hall, go on, do this, do that. And later on, it was taken over by another caterer, and it was the same thing. But at Home and Hall, the big dish was the chicken pot pie and the banana fritters. So the man who made the banana fritters, the people who worked there, they called him Francis Fritter. and he, he had the knack, and he made the creation. Famous, And so if you had a Girl Scout banquet or a sports banquet or a retirement party or a funeral or a wedding, everything happened at Home and Hall. And it was really pretty funny, except for the day that Francis Fritter was a little under the weather. And so somebody said to him, go home, rest up. And so he left. So he was gone for months. And then all of a sudden, he came back one day, went in the kitchen, took his apron off the hook, went back to work.
As if nothing happened.
As if nothing happened.
That's funny.
And the other important thing is important going on in Norwood, especially in South Norwood at that time, we still had the three churches, Lithuanian Church, Polish Church, and Syrian Church. So the woman in the Syrian Church, who was the leader of the whole place, was a woman named Esther Howard Deeb. And she was a woman way ahead of her time. She had 4 daughters and 1 son. Her only son was a United States Marine killed in World War II. And Esther, though, she married a man from Syria, but he was smart. And he didn't speak English that well, but he could read and write and everything in Syrian. And he was smart, and that's why all of her kids were smart. Esther made all of the kids go to college, all 3 girls. In those days,
that didn't happen.
Women did not go to college. One of her kids became a doctor.
Wow.
And so Esther was in the church, our church. She started the first Sunday school in the United States of America for kids that went to our church. She and my mother started the first choir. And in those days, they had to get a professor from the Hellenic College in
Brookline?
Boston.
Yeah.
And his name was Christos Verenides. So do you remember mimeograph machines?
Oh, yeah.
So
These kids have no idea. If there's kids watching, they have no idea. Yeah.
And the chemicals and the paper and everything. So the professor had paper with just lines on it, and he would write the notes on the lines, and then Esther would. We had a mimeograph machine down the church, and that. Where are we today? You can copy this, copy that, scan this. It's a huge change. So Esther was so busy. Every boy from our church during World War II got a handwritten letter from her, because a lot of them, the mother and father couldn't read and write in English. She'd write it out for them, or if they didn't have a parent here, every single boy in the whole church would get a letter every week from her. Then she would teach people how to become American citizens.
Oh, nice.
In the beginning, she had all the lessons at her house, and in the end, the town let her use the town. Then she would go to the Congregational Church here in Norwood, Charlie Holman's church, and she would have people from all over come, women, and roll bandages for the war. I mean, this is in the 50s. This is, our time, our lifetime, Jack.
I know.
And so do you remember Tony Mastandrea?
Oh, yeah.
So his brother Joe, you probably know this, was the head of the buildings for Norfolk County. He was the manager of the buildings. So I never heard this story until after Esther died. It was Joe Mastandrea, Tony's brother, who told me this story. So Esther would work all day long, all night long. Every night she'd do things for the Republicans and for the government. And so Charlie, she had to bring up 4 kids by herself, and her husband died young. And so Charlie Holman got her a job at the Registry of Deeds. So her job was downstairs at the Registry of Deeds. So sometimes, she was old. And sometimes in the afternoon she'd get tired. so she'd take a little nap. So Tom Shine was her boss, and he wouldn't give her a raise. So, so Esther happened to mention it to Charlie Holman. So Joe Mastandrea said he was there the day that it happened. He said that Charlie Holman came in, and they heard the door. Those doors have glass, but the glass didn't break, and that's how Esther got a raise.
Yeah, that wouldn't happen today.
I know, but that's what happened then. And then she was the worst driver in the world. So when Dickie Joseph would be on the corner of Washington and Dean in South Norwood at 5 o'clock, Tony Mastandrea knew she was such a bad driver that he would have one of the men who worked there turn a car around and point it toward Norwood. so whatever Norwood cop was on duty at the intersection, mostly in those days, they'd always put the youngest cop out on the corner there. But when Dickie Joseph knew that Esther saw her car coming down the street, he'd run inside Columbo's to save his life. then poor Mr. Kelly that lived on the corner, Dookie Kelly, who worked for the post office department after World War II. So he always was a single man. He had a new car. So you think he'd learn. First time Esther goes to take a right past it, boom, and then Dookie has the car fixed, boom, again. It was an amazing thing. But I just didn't want to let our town go by without adding the happiness and the love of the thing,
Yeah, those stories are invaluable.
Thank you.
So let's talk about some of the 60s. We probably won't get it all done today. We can always pick it up next time. So,
sure.
So 60s, who was the town manager then? Was it still the same guy? Same gentleman, I should say? Blasnick, yeah.
Yeah, and I told you the Blasnick stories.
Yeah.
And so that I told you a lot of good Blasnick stories. But the 60s in Norwood, what year did John Carroll come?
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah.
Let's think.
I tried to do the research on it. I know he was here for a long time.
78.
Oh, look at Miss Megan.
I know.
Oh,
So.
78. So that was before John Carroll.
Yeah.
So
That
was all Brian.
Okay. Brian knew that.
Oh, Brian, oh, wow. So let's see. So in the 60s, the town manager must have been John Mogan.
I knew. Yeah,
And
that's what it was.
His brother was Bill Mogan, the contractor. And Bill Mogan he lived up off of Pleasant Street. And he had a contracting business. He employed half the town, the young men in the town. There were certain things kids went through. Just like, you could, the wonderful thing that went on in the 60s, Mr. Jack, was Dukes. And the last person I know now, Timmy McDonough, is the last person I know who worked at Dukes with Dukes.
Is that the place at Giles Square?
You got it.
Yeah.
You got it.
Yeah.
And that was like part of graduation in life to work at Dukes. But
So for us, I grew up in Rosendale, right?
yeah.
So for us, it was working at Roach Brothers.
Oh.
I think almost everyone in my family did, and there was a series of so similar thing.
One of the Roach Brothers family just stepped up who wants to try and help us out with the hospital.
Yeah, that's Rick.
Hey, oh, you
He's
know
a friend
him?
of mine. Yeah.
Oh, is that how you got him?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Oh, thanks, because I heard he wants to try and help us
Yeah.
out.
He's a wonderful guy.
But I can tell you a little bit about Dukes. Everybody used to go there. That was the place to go. And it was because of Duke and because of all the wonderful young people that worked there. You know who one of the main persons was that worked there?
Who's that?
Guess.
You.
Somebody. No.
Bobby Thornton.
No, Bobby Thornton.
I'm trying
He
to
was.
think.
He was the.
Did Packy work there? I feel like he did. Packy Mulvihill.
Packy probably did,
Yeah.
but
So it would have been before Timmy you're talking about, right?
Oh yeah. So the most famous person who worked at Dukes was Tommy Riolo.
Oh, that figures, yeah.
Yeah, and Tommy Riolo, he was a selectman for 18 years,
Yeah.
but he began at Dukes, and he lived up there in Hill Street. And do you remember life before the lottery?
The lottery started when I was probably in high school. So
In high school,
I remember
so-
when it came out.
Do you remember a thing called the number pool?
Yeah.
That was before the
Yeah,
lottery.
So my grandfather lived downstairs. He used to make the call. I know what you're talking about.
Did he really?
Yeah.
He made a call?
Yeah, because he had a guy.
Oh! So there was also a guy that worked at Bird and Son. He was the guy at Bird and Son, and if you knew him, that was good for at least, a lot of votes, because everyone knew him, liked him. Boom. Then vote for so and so, vote for so and so. He was a key person on the campaign. But Tommy Riola worked up there, So the famous story is how Jimmy Murphy was the chief, and I'm not saying who was working the day that it happened, but Jimmy Murphy, he opened up the door and he yelled in, "I know what's going on in there." and and so everybody's scared. But another interesting story is how in those days the police were a lot more free about letting friends ride around in the cruiser with them. And so now if you do it, you have a parade from the senior center, and it's all on TV and everything. But in the old days, if a friend, needed a ride or something, so this particular cop had a person in the car, and he got a call, robbery and taking place. So the cop dropped the individual off at Duke's, and then said to Duke, "Take care of them," and that was it. Then that was the robbery where the person shot the lieutenant police. The only time there was a shooting robbery in the town of Norwood, and it ended up by Polaroid. Oh, and speaking of Polaroid,
So what got robbed?
a bank.
Okay.
A bank, yeah. So, but the cop got shot, and they got the guy. They chased him in the woods. Imagine that.
And
they caught him.
Well, there was that's when it was just the
Woods. It was Polaroid.
Before Polaroid, though, right? Yeah.
No.
Oh, Polaroid was there already?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was going to talk to you. You said the 60s about Polaroid. Now that's an interesting subject. And just think, making film that developed instantly. And the wonderful thing that it did was gave so many people in Norwood a lot of jobs. That was a big, big thing.
Oh, yeah.
But there was always some curiosity about how they had some storage up there in the ground tanks. Did you know about this?
Yeah.
And they had dirt embankments around the outside of the storage, so that it was always a point of interest. But it was also a point like so many jobs, and that was a very big thing. That was a new industry for Norwood.
The Polaroid swinger camera.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Swinger, that was the name of it?
Yeah.
It was good for construction people. It was good for insurance people. And now people with their
It's
phones.
right on their phone, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember the first time first time I went to a scavenger hunt, so this is before kids, so this is 30-something years ago.
Was that from down at
From
College?
the Civic, yeah. It was Collie, yeah. But the Civic ran it, Civic Center ran it. And we all had those
Polaroid
cameras
cameras?
because we didn't have phones like that in
Right.
those days.
All right. We had one in our house because of Paul and doing construction jobs. That's why we had to have one. But we used that one time in a nice way. But that was a good thing. So going on here in the 60s was the beginning of the change. We were changing from a quiet town, to a more louder and speedy and more active town. And we could really see it happening here. And everybody was curious about, say, like there was a woman, Emily Moses, and she had never married, never had any kids. So when I told her that my daughter, who had started school, was using a history book that was 18 years old, and those days she said, "Make an appointment with the superintendent." So all the years at town meeting, stop spending, stop spending. Then she finds out that the kids need the help. Then I had to make an appointment. We had to make sure we didn't have old textbooks at Broad School anymore, It was when we were coming out of the quietness and moving into the center more.
Yeah, I remember, I don't know if you remember, Ann Busler, who was a science teacher up here for many years.
Oh.
And and I remember talking to her one day, and she said, the science I'm teaching now wasn't even around when I was in school. You know, that's how much things change. And
Fast.
you got to keep up to date. It's a lot easier to keep up to date because everything's online. But
So now I also tried to look up, I ran out of time, the date that the Willett School was built. Do you know that?
it was, no, I know it was in the 60s because it was after
The Willett
the
was the
Cleveland.
last.
Yeah, and Cleveland was 58, I believe.
Oh, it was in the 50s,
Yeah.
58, and then the Oldham was in the 60s, I know that. But the Willett, I have a very funny story about the Willett. So we're,
The mistake in the woods, they call it, right?
and I didn't hear that.
Yeah, that's what they call it in my neighborhood for some reason.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
Yeah.
But the whole group up there were very active, and they were very intelligent people, and they all had kids. And so there was a path that they want, Ann Turner and her group, there was a path that they wanted to go through so the kids wouldn't have to walk on the street so much to get from Albemarle Road to the school. And so we were all up at town meeting, and we were all the people who had kids in school, we were all together. It didn't matter, Willett School, Balch School, County, we were all together. And we wanted to make sure that they got the path because we didn't want the kids to have to walk on the street. So Bob Capasso was the town moderator.
Yeah, he was the one right before me.
So what year did you come in?
93?
Oh, so that was
No,
that was
no,
late.
91. Sorry, I was 91.
Oh, so
He was there for a while.
Yeah, he was. So anyway, so the gang was there, and their group was making the speech, and so then I had some information that I wanted to give. So Capasso said, "That's enough time for you," and whatever he said, you know. So he says, "Now you can sit down," and so I kept talking. So he said, "I think you should sit down," and I said, I'm going to finish. And so he said, "Officer," and he did. And he called the cop down to usher me out. And who was the cop? Joel McKenzie, who was like a relative of mine, South Norwood. We all grew up together. So he'd grown-up man. He'd been in the military police. So he comes walking down the aisle, Helen, please sit down. And he was almost crying.
He was put in a tough spot.
And he was almost crying, you know. So out of love and friendship and kindness for Joe McKenzie, I sat down. So after the meeting, all the women from the gang, all the group that we were together to get this thing passed, they all walked beside me so the cops wouldn't bother me. And then the next day in the mail, John Toomey's wife, Patricia Toomey, who was a Balch School parent, she sent me from the Monopoly game a get-out-of-jail-free card.
That's cute.
And I still have that card, you know. But that's how we were in the 60s. We were so blessed here with the kindness and the sharing and the happiness, you know.
Yeah, so let me see. Let's just do one little thing if we can.
We're not running out of time,
Yeah,
are
we are actually.
Oh,
But that's okay because we can, because the 60s are such a,
big, oh yeah.
yeah, so it's worth more than one show on
Okay.
it because, you know, I'll be curious next time. If you got like one story on it, we could do that. But, you know, with the Vietnam War and all that stuff starting, you know, the 60s was a big change in everything. So what was it like here?
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. We had a rough time. We had a very rough time. You know, George Thomas was the veterans agent, and I could give you a whole show on George Thomas and his
Tiger was his nickname, right?
Tiger Thomas, but he should be a topic, but not now. That's the whole 60s. Let's see. The fear and like the loss. You know, we had big fear and we did have big loss. And the expert on that topic would be Brian Murphy,
Yep.
who lost his brother Richard, and so many.
You must have had a lot of classmates.
Larry Mitchell, Billy Negrini. We have just from my era, you know, we have. But the people who went off, and Lear O'Leary, she went to Vietnam,
Oh, well.
and she wasn't a soldier. She was in the Red Cross.
Okay.
And so, they called her a donut dolly. And there she was, driving an ambulance around in Vietnam.
Wow.
And those were hard years, Jack.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Those were very hard years. Everybody going to be tested and this and that. And the fear.
Yeah, we were, my personal, my nuclear family, we were lucky because my brother graduated in 1973, and that was the year they stopped the draft. And so we were lucky.
Right.
But some of my friends lost older brothers over there, and it
Yeah.
was,
Billy Negrini was, I'm not sure, I think he was a Marine. And he was rescued, he was wounded, he was rescued in an American Red Cross helicopter, and he was shot from the ground and killed.
man.
We had stuff like that happen. And when it was missed by the whole town.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't just the family. It was the whole town who suffered. And, you think of Esther Deeb and the old ladies winding up the bandages
Right.
in the hall of the church. And then you go forward another 50 years or how many it was, or less. And then they're there. Here we are again.
Yeah.
And then in the 70s, we'll get to it, but the Girl Scouts, we were making pumpkin bread, and Donna McDonough fixed it so she was friends with some guy that worked in the post office in Dedham. He kept the back door of the post office open for us on a Saturday so we could mail the pumpkin bread off.
How about that?
Probably go to jail now.
I know.
No, but it was just a hard life at that time, Jack.
All right, so let's leave that here.
Okay.
And we'll pick it up next
On
time.
a more happy note.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I wanted to get in. It was so obvious from just the way you answered how difficult it was.
Yeah.
And so next time we'll talk about more happy things. So I'm glad we did that one now.
Okay.
So we can do that. So, thank you, Helen, for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Jack.
And
thanks, everybody, whoever is watching. Thank you very much.
yeah, and thanks to the great crew down here at NCM. And we'll be back next time. And don't forget, check out everything on NCM because there's quality programming here. Good day and keep safe.